Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm on live because I remember last week I had a little bit of a problem, so I'm checking. So just bear with me. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm sure you're doing really good. It's a fun day, Sunday, and I'm sure we had enough of that Super Bowl stuff last week. Yeah, I like the Super Bowl halftime show too. I'm sure you did too. And if you didn't, it is what it is. But I typically start off with some music. I'm about a minute early, so I'm going to kick it off with some music. A local artist, Dante Hall, who is a friend of Voices of Change and has been on here. I'm going to play something from him, and then I'm going to get this show started. Let's see, what are we going to play from Dante? Here we go.
What about my love? Seems you have forgotten love. I do believe that something went wrong somewhere. What about my feelings? Do they mean anything at all? You got me so in love, I'm too blind to see. And that you got my love, like you wanna put me down.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, beautiful people, and happy Sunday. And thank you for tuning in to the Voices of Change, only on Intellectual Radio, the house that Earl built. You know, Earl Winfrey, the other Winfrey, is a Black entrepreneur and owner of the station. And my name is Janice, and I'll be your host this evening. Today I am so excited. I'm excited because I have the author of Hood Healing. Her name is V. Harrison. And Miss Harrison will discuss her new project, the book Hood Healing. And I think we're going to also talk about trauma that impacts the city, because her book is a narrative on inner city trauma, and she's going to really bring it. As I was scouring through Google and, trying to find out what they're saying about this book, man, are they giving this thing rave reviews. I mean, rave reviews. I'm going to read a paragraph of what I heard. It said, from one of the most influential and prolific journalists Chicago has to offer comes a gritty and compelling narrative on inner city trauma. Through the use of personal stories and interviews with local journalists and media influencers, V.L. Harrison exposes the impact of generational trauma on Black people living in the inner city of Chicago. Hood Healing sounds the alarm on what it means to be woke by boldly challenging young people to disrupt and dismantle their own trauma, and encouraging its readers to embark upon a journey of self-healing. With passion, transparency, and courage, Harrison shares her own experiences of growing up on the west side of Chicago and how making peace with her own trauma has forever transformed her life. And as I was scouring through, there was paragraph after paragraph. There was always rave reviews on this book and on her as a prolific journalist. It speaks volumes. So you're going to meet her shortly. Everyone knows I always start my show off with a scripture. And for today, of course, it's going to be a scripture on healing. It comes from Jeremiah 17:14. And it says, heal me, Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved. For you are the one I praise. That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scripture, and so appropriate today as we're going to talk about trauma and talk about healing. I want to give you 4 or 5 quick facts on trauma that I found kind of interesting. The first one, it says trauma experienced in childhood and adolescence can significantly impact the development of the brain. Now, think about how our kids oftentimes are having problems in school, having problems sleeping, Some may have flashbacks. Think about that's the impact of daily trauma that some of us are exposed to on a daily basis. The second one, exposure to trauma can exacerbate mental health issues, short and long term mental health issues, something maybe a panic attack, anxiety. Think about that. Also, increased substance abuse and abuse have been strongly connected to coping with traumatic experiences. And it makes sense. A person wants to get away and they may find comfort in drugs. They want to escape the pain. Another one, trauma, memories never go away. I thought this was interesting because I thought they did go away. I thought you can maybe tuck them away in a nice little place and not deal with them, but they never go away. And the last one is healing is always possible when you experience trauma. Healing is always possible. That's a good thing. So therefore, we're going to talk to our guest today, and she's going to tell us how healing can be transformative and how it can change things and how healing is possible. Let me read the bio for this dynamic author. She's not only a dynamic author, she's an award-winning journalist. She's an influencer. I mean, she's like the go-to person in Chicago. And I got to add, and you'll read it in her bio, she is a product of the West Side. Theo Harrison is an award-winning journalist from Chicago. Her work appears in publications across the city covering and highlighting the Black culture and community news. Harrison is a Chicago change agent, setting the stage for new voices in Black media. During the course of her career as a journalist, her writing was through the lens of a Black woman raised in the city's largest and poorest community on the West Side during the 1990s. After receiving her BA from Columbia College, she served as a journalism instructor for inner city youth in Chicago, promoting news literacy and Black-owned media. Harrison has spoken to over a dozen audiences across the nation. Press coverage of her work as a Chicago media influencer can be found in the Chicago Tribune, WBEZ, WGN, iHeartMedia, and from the city's mayor, Lori Lightfoot, where Harrison recently received recognition from the mayor during a televised press conference in May of 2020. Harrison continues to cover community news in addition to Black fine arts and culture across the nation. Harrison is a mother of 5 children and a poodle. Hood Healing is Harrison's first published book. However, she has recently published an award-winning and now viral article. A West Side house party exposes a disconnect between young Black residents and Chicago officials in the news during the COVID-19 pandemic. This article served as a catalyst for the book Hood Healing. So now I want you to help me welcome this dynamic woman, Theo Harrison. Woo!
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
You have done, when I was reading about you, I was like, I want to read this. I want to read this. But I'm like, you have, wow.
Yeah, I am very, very blessed to have lived a life of storytelling and for it to have come so natural. Very grateful for that. Thank you for that. It's always humbling to hear those things.
And now you're a storyteller. Think about that. You know, when I read bios, yours was just so riveting. What they say, prolific?
Yeah.
I mean, when they write such grand things about you. So, and I remember that article so well because that was like in the middle of the pandemic. Like the media kept talking about all these kids are packed in this beautiful, and they kept saying how nice the house was.
I know, they kept saying that. I know.
I didn't understand that one, but I'm like, but anyway, all these kids are packed in this house and they're partying in the midst of a pandemic. And they made it like it was like, and I'm thinking, okay, these kids, from what I saw, they looked really young. And I'm thinking, okay, they're stir crazy.
I think that story changed the way that we talked about COVID in Black Chicago.
Do you?
I absolutely have received that compliment, I would say, but that feedback that it was before then that COVID just folded into another story that was just another reflection of how little Black people had on the West Side and South Side. So it wasn't really putting the reflectors on how so much of it connected. And I think that story written for the tribe at that time, I think it did just that. So
It
thank
was
you
an
for
awesome. It
having
was
me.
an awesome story. I remember it. I didn't remember you being the author because you're listening to the story. I read the story and I'm like, wow. But I didn't now. It's an honor. It's an honor. You're the one who wrote that, and I'm sure anybody within earshot remember that story because they played it over and over.
Oh my God, that story still rains down today.
Yeah, it's like wow.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
So you're causing paradigm shifts right here in the city. Interesting. That's good. Okay,
Mm.
we're going to start with the interview. Normally, I do a new segment, but I knew after kind of reading things about you that there's a lot of stuff to go over. So I wanted to devote the whole hour to you.
Thank you.
So let's get going. It's just going to be laid back. If there's something that you don't want to talk about, no worries. We won't have to talk about it.
You probably wouldn't have to worry about that, but
You
okay.
know, some people say, I don't want you to mention this. I don't want you to mention this. Anyone who is on, please make a comment and say hello to my
Hello.
prestigious guest, Theo Harrison, influencer. Man, they got so many names for you. But anyway, what inspired you? I mean, because you're a journalist, so it kind of makes sense. But what inspired you to start writing? Were you always a writer as a child?
You know what I was? I told my mother when I was 8 years old that I was a writer.
Oh my
And
God.
she looked down at me and she said, I know. And I just knew it was one of those things where school was a technicality. I had to go.
Right.
I knew what would come of it, and I knew that it would be a career goal for me. I think hood healing, though, comes from a deep sense of pain. I believe that hood healing is my ode to the city. It is a love story. It is a hate letter.
A love story?
Oh my gosh. I do love Chicago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, when you're in the city and you're a part of it in the way that I grew up as a part of Black Chicago, there's so many things to love. There's so many things to hate too, though.
Hmm. Hmm.
All of those stories were really deeply inside of me when I was a child. All of those stories were very much a part of my life. And so Hood Healing is a compilation of stories from Chicago kids who talk about their trauma in Chicago. And I relate that trauma personally in their own stories to trauma. I relate that to ancestral trauma and how we are living out Black people on plantations, 1619 and on, right in the streets of Chicago, because that trauma has never died down. And the generation, being mine and yours, are still reaping from the traumatic seeds sown by our ancestors' pain.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think anybody and everybody would have to agree with that. Um, that it originates there, and it is manifested itself because of that. But do you think any of this is kind of self-inflicted at all? Any of
You
our
know
trauma?
what? I believe that it is, and I believe that is the only thing that media and society and community highlights. The fact that Black pain in a lot of cases is self-inflicted. But when we don't know better,
Yeah.
and when we don't have the resources, and when we don't have the love and the support, then the self-infliction, you can empathize with some of that a little bit. As you mentioned, I absolutely love how you opened up with this trauma lesson. Thank you for doing that.
I was kind of surprised when I was looking it up because I
Yeah,
always thought trauma you could kind of black it out.
same.
I think everyone's had some kind of trauma, particularly
Mhm.
living here. But I thought you can but it does come back sometime. But I thought you could really block it out.
And I think that we do, at least we think we do, and we have. And so have our ancestors, and so have our grandmothers, and our mothers, and our fathers, and their fathers. And that's exactly what hood healing sort of reveals, like this idea of suppressing these things. I'm not talking about what happened in mama house, because
Right.
that's just not what we do.
The secrets.
In Black families, to tell the truth outside of the house is very taboo.
Oh yeah.
And hood healing is storytelling from journalists who often tell other people's stories, but we're telling our own stories. And so that in itself is very odd type of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea that we can't talk about certain things and that there's this shame behind sharing. And so hood healing really brings to peace that pain, and really connects it to what a lot of our history books and a lot of our curriculum in today's school don't want to bring forth. They're literally wanting to ban these types of lessons inside of schools and ban these types of books inside of schools because this country refuses to tell the truth of the atrocious things that it has done to those African descendants
And continue to do.
and continue to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is a continual cycle that we are okay with being hushed about.
Unfortunately, I haven't read the book yet, but when I first saw it, I thought, okay, hood healing, it's probably about families that have been part of violence or something that's happened traumatic. But as I was looking on Google and I was kind of hitting the book and getting different opinions of it, you actually talk about a wide range of trauma. You literally talk about trauma walking down the street and being black or driving black, or you talk about the whole gamut. That's deep.
Yes, it was deep. I want to acknowledge Joyce. She just said hey to us. Hi, Joyce. She's
Hi.
on. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I go through very personal experiences in my own household.
Mm-hmm.
And there's levels to this, right? My trauma isn't necessarily your trauma.
And
What
vice
I've
versa, yeah.
internalized could be very much different than the things and the pain that you've internalized. The way that I've suppressed it could be very different in the way that you've suppressed it. However, Black folks don't have a place to lay that pain, you see, because in inner city Chicago, in most cases, our health facilities and our mental health facilities have been and are constantly being shut down, along with many of our inner city schools, predominantly Black and brown schools. I've covered it a lot. And being a community journalist, I have been on the front lines of a lot of this disparity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being a community journalist, I have lived in these neighborhoods, right? So I have been a storyteller from a very special vantage point. Let me tell you how special this vantage point gets. Hi, Marie. Thanks for joining us. This vantage point is so special because just a year ago, this time I lost my only brother to Chicago violence. My only brother, the oldest of 6 children of my parents, 6 bullets.
Oh.
10 bullets. I'm sorry, I quoted that wrong. 10 bullets in the morning on Super Bowl Sunday. And what's important to know is that when you're that close to trauma, it's almost like, wow, this can happen to me, right? But then life goes on, and this trauma just compounds with other things. And so as I was preparing to write Hood Healing, my brother was somebody that I was sharing those thoughts with.
Oh.
No, this happened, this idea manifested before I lost him. So my dedication reads very clearly that it is also a dedication to him and lives lost in this city that's typically just chucked up to gang violence, or this Black kid was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And being a journalist, I've learned how to empathetically cover these stories, understanding these neighborhoods. But every journalist doesn't get that, And so there's always and constantly a misrepresentation of Black folks in the media. And that makes it hard to heal and mend your pain.
I have to I have to give a shout out, and I only have to give a shout out because I'm involved with it. There is a mental health center on the west side that supports East and West Garfield Park, North Lawndale, and the near west side, and it's free. If you have an address, it's free. It's called the Encompassing Center.
I actually wrote about the Encompass Center. Shout out to that team over there.
Oh, you wrote about it?
I actually wrote about it. I have got to quote you the article. It too was in the Tribe. It was definitely featured in a story where I talked about Rahm Emanuel's closure of all of those mental health facilities on the West and South Side. And so I shouted out Encompass Center as well. And great work. Thank you for mentioning that. It is a very rare resource on Chicago's West Side. I know that Representative LaShawn K. Ford is a huge champion. I often
He
see the
is.
ad.
He is.
I
Mhm.
often see the ad in his newsletter. So if it's endorsed by him, I know it's great. But thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I personally had to call him up and give him a shout out for doing it,
Oh,
because
wonderful.
this is so interesting because it's for the people and by the people.
Hmm.
So the mayor can't close it down. It's
That's
within
right.
dollars. So it's thank you for writing about that. I didn't see that when I was digging.
Oh, you gotta go dig deep.
You're right. I got to dig deeper.
A
Um,
lot out there.
Now you kind of mentioned that your brother, and I really am sorry to hear about that, but you said that you were actually talking to him when you're writing the book. Did your family support you writing? How do Black people feel? I know how it when I was growing up, they were like, what goes on in this house, stay in this house, and
Hmm.
you just kept everything self-contained. How did your family feel when you first began writing and exposing everything and going to journalists and getting these stories?
You know, I didn't say nothing for a while to specific members in my family because I don't know that it mattered what they would have felt about it.
Yeah, you were going to do it.
It was a necessary thing for so many reasons, especially after the murder of my brother in that way, on the West Side where we all grew up. It was a necessary story to be told, right? Um, my mother, who is in chapter 3 of the book, that wasn't even a planned person to be in the book. That was actually a suggestion by my editor. Shout out to Dina Chapman of Precision Editing LLC. She read the book and she said, something is missing, V. And she said, have you thought about interviewing your mom? And I'm
Wow.
like, no, I didn't. Um, and so I did. And I have people that are telling me who have read the book that I can't even believe that that wasn't pre-planned. That's pretty cool to hear.
What?
Yeah.
Um, was this your first book that you wrote?
You know what? My mom often likes to tell the world that this is my second book because when
Okay,
I was in the third grade,
third grade.
girl, my mom will not let this story go. She goes to every book talk, going up on the podium, telling people that this is my second book.
Okay.
She won't let it go. And when I was in third grade, I was in one of those young author programs, okay, and they published my book for me. My mom tells the
Oh,
whole world that that was my first book.
she's
Hood
right.
Healing is my very first book as a professional writer.
But your mom is actually accurate. It is your second book. Congratulations.
You would
And
guess it, so.
do you have a sequel coming from Hood Healing? I'm sure
Oh
you
my
do.
God. I absolutely am working on something very special. It's a secret, but I will say this.
I knew it.
It would be it's going to be something catered very specifically to the younger crowd. In a special project that I'm doing that is a uproot from Hood Healing.
Ah, well, I was going to ask it at the end of the show, but I got to ask it now just so I can write it down. How do we get your book? I know Amazon has it.
Yes, Amazon has it. It's the only carrier right now. So if you
Okay.
are on Amazon, you type it on in there, Hood Healing, it'll come right up. And I am so super excited to be on Amazon because it's one of my favorite places to shop. And I know it's pretty popular. So yeah, Amazon.
Absolutely. Wow, Amazon. Good for you. Good for you. Who are some of your favorite authors?
Oh
I
my
know you
God, how
probably have a
long do
lot of
you?
them.
You know what? Growing up, it was really those Black women that were, breakthrough writers. Toni
Mhm.
Morrison,
Mm,
Zora Neale Hurston. I read an awful lot of Alice Walker. I was really into poetry, Maya Angelou. My mother bought me a lot of journals and a lot of books. Um, my gosh, she poured into me something amazing. And
yeah, I
she
hear
knew.
that. Yeah.
She knew. She knew. She definitely, her and my dad was very adamant about gifting me a journal every Christmas. And every single time a holiday or a birthday rolled around, I was getting some type of a book, a poetry book or something. I absolutely love poetry. Um, I just remember being obsessed with magazines and how my grandma Ruth would keep Jet and Ebony around on the
Oh,
table and
yeah.
the magazine racks. And so that kind of lended itself to my love for, the glossy, pretty stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
Because my book is not, it is very extraordinary in a way. And I always show it off because it's not just a typical looking book, right?
Yep. It's a little flashy. Yeah. I like this in
It's
the
a little
corner.
flashy, you got some artwork in here, and I'm pretty proud of the look of it
Mhm.
because what I know that people are attracted to, it's aesthetics, right?
Yep.
And it's also purposefully and strategically a very short read because I wanted this discussion to start right away. This book is under 100 pages.
Oh,
um,
wow.
yes, I have people who have literally told me they finished in an amount of few hours because they couldn't put it down.
Right.
Um, and I'm really hoping that this book goes beyond just starting a conversation, right? Because I'm a doer. And as of late, there are so many local organizations and local elected officials who are looking to partner with me
Good.
and do pilot programs and initiatives that would really benefit the healing of the hood. And so I got friends calling me the hood healer. I'm just
Yeah. That's a good name.
It's an action item. To heal the hood is a constant action item. And you have to be in the heart of what is happening. Someone that is respected, someone that is smart enough to maneuver the streets and maneuver the media. As a journalist, I have had the ability to do that. And as a native of Chicago, I've had the ability to be immersed in the hood. There's no better person to tell these stories than the people who have lived these stories. So shout out to my forward author, Donald T. Pungo. He's an MTV News show host.
Oh,
Shout out to my mama, Sandra Harrison.
absolutely.
Mama made the book. Shout out to Sylvia Snowden of Can TV. She's a TV producer. Evan F. Moore, former Chicago Sun-Times reporter, and now the press secretary of Chicago Public Schools.
Oh,
Natasha Thompson, who is the co-founder of True Star Foundation, a youth foundation for up-and-coming media professionals. Gerard McClendon, Emmy Award-winning journalist, a huge cheerleader of mine. I'm so grateful for him. It has been amazing writing and producing alongside such brilliant people. And interviewing even my own mama and feeling like I am meeting her all over again. And talking about these
wow.
traumatic experiences and how personal those things are.
Your mother really poured into you, but you have such an extended village of greats. I mean, the names that you named, if I know half of them and I'm not into writing, these people, wow. But
Yeah.
you always go back to your mom and your dad. She really
Mhm.
had an influence on you, on your writing.
Oh, yeah. She
Yeah,
knew.
yeah, she could probably tell that's why she talks about your second book.
Uh-huh. That's exactly right. She planted a seed early on and she knew, there were times, very dark times, growing up, domestic violence relationships and custody battles with my own children, things that I've
Yeah.
experienced,
Yeah.
and still, I never veered from this goal and this life. Just understanding at a very young age that Black people's history was taken, stolen, and
Absolutely.
the importance of documentation and the importance of telling stories as a Black person and being someone that people read and trusted. It just meant so much to me. It always will. It always will.
How does writing make you feel when you have the power in your hands and the pen to write something like this and possibly change and transform people?
There's a very huge sense of vulnerability.
Hmm.
um, I only talk like I'm brave all the time. I'm not. It is a very, we go our entire lives, especially Black people. It's also a part of, talk about what happened in Mama House. But this whole, I don't care what people think about me, we do. Um, and I think that the sensitivity and the rawness of what I told, it makes me very vulnerable. But I know that that is the very vulnerability that can change somebody's life, and make them look at their pain and their journey to healing very differently. Um, but it's also very free and strengthening to be able to share and say things I know are very unusual. And in most cases, you're sworn to secrecy. It is very free feeling to share in that way for that reason.
Does your book touch on sexual trauma with women also? Oh, women and men.
Absolutely, it does.
Oh, okay,
And
it does.
I won't do it too much of a teaser, but it
I'm just so
absolutely
curious now.
does.
Okay.
Everything that you could consider, that's typically a secret in Black families. Incest, sexual trauma within our own families, trauma abuse from our own parents, from their parents, hand-me-down whooping techniques, and learning to be a whoopings and give whoopings because we got whoopings. Creating
I got
space.
to stop you right there because I
Absolutely.
have a question. So, do you believe in whippings or
I
spankings?
used to.
But you
I
don't know
believe I believe in whoopings right up until whoopings landed me in court.
in court.
Would you believe that? I'm gonna have you read the book. Would you believe that? That there are descendants of white slave owners who are now judges and public defenders and attorneys who now are making laws for Black mothers against whooping their children. A taught behavior, may I add, from our ancestors. I'll have you read the book.
I will have to. I mean, I
We
don't
grew up
believe in
getting
trying to.
whooping.
I don't believe in trying to kill a kid, but I do believe in discipline, and
Absolutely.
I believe in spankings. And two kids aren't the same from the same family. Some of them may need to be anyway, whatever. But it is something they say that's carried over from slavery when we were whipped, and that's how we learned, and that's
That's how we
passed.
learn.
Okay, so you titled the book Hood Healing, and I asked the question of why did you title the book, but as you're talking, that's a moot point. It's hood healing.
Yeah,
In your book, do you talk about actually how to heal, how
I
people
do.
heal?
I do. One thing about this book, again, is a conversation starter, sure, but also doing. What are we going to do about it? So, in a lot of cases, in my very final chapter, chapter 5, I'll talk about specific things that individuals and neighborhoods and communities can start doing. It's a solution based book because I knew that just tooting my own horn and complaining wasn't hood healing, right? That was just hood talking,
Right.
hood interviewing. And I know and understand verbiage. Healing is doing something. So what are we gonna do about this, right?
Hmm.
I'll talk about the need for people to be very proactive inside of their homes and rethink themselves and how they think of their children and how they raise their children. I'll talk about the need for education inside of schools, telling the truth. Not saying that Toni Morrison's bluest eye in the history in that book is a threat to your white child, but saying that despite your white child being uncomfortable about this, this is a part of history. In addition to education, I talk about politics and what that really means in Chicago. Let's not talk about the whole world. Let's just stay home for a second.
Right.
And the fact that within our own city, educational politics, community politics, environmental politics are all dirty because of the selfishness deeply rooted into this city, which are results of the past. All right. I also talk about the need for the media to create a different narrative about Black people. I'm going to repeat that because that's the one that's near and dear to my heart. I talk about the need for the media to revamp its narrative on how it portrays Black people.
Expand on that. Are you saying because they always stereotype us as being gangbangers, or stereotype us as always doing something negative, or stereotype us as, and if we're not, if we're doing something positive, we're an exception? I mean, expand on that for me.
What I am saying is that if I am 12, 13 years old, and when I turn on ABC 7, everybody doing something bad looks like me, what does that say about me? And if every time there is someone white that is harming somebody that looks like me, what type of friction does that create a young Black child with the local police? And so all of the narratives being built, and now we don't just have ABC 7, NBC, CBS, and WTTW and so forth. Now there's social media that is giving us more immediate news, and the immediacy of that news is even more inaccurate. So there's only a one-sided depiction of who I am if I'm Black. And so just recently, in my time, I'm 35 years old. In my time, am I starting to see prolific Black journalists on a Sunday night radio show with a black-skinned, brown-skinned woman with locks? That's new. And so creating this new narrative of who we are as Black people is one of the main solutions and one of my biggest goals as a journalist, as an influencer, as a mother, as a community member. Because if we change this narrative and help young people rethink who they are, they can better receive some of these action items to begin this healing process. Because you don't understand why your neighborhood is so trashy and what that does to your psyche when you're 14, 15 years old. And if you are only 2 minutes from Oak Park, like I was growing up, and it's a world of different, it might make you grow up feeling like you're less than white people. And these are the very honest, raw, basic things that not only our local government is failing at sharing, but our federal government as well.
I agree. I'm going to extend that question, because I've always had an issue with the music, because I also felt that the music had a similar impact than what you're saying that the media does. Are you also going to look at the music and how the music is impacting our young people?
Gerard McClendon, chapter 2, talks very vividly about rap music and this euphoric way of thinking about violence and talking about violence and the value of life. I interviewed Gerard because he's someone that I watched growing up. He is someone that I knew reported on old school Chicago. He is someone that is the voice for people a bit older than me. And so I really needed that intellectual maturity in the book, you know? And talking to Gerard, he absolutely breaks down rap music and its direct connect to the violence in Chicago. And that's all.
That's in your book. That's in your book, chapter 2.
Absolutely.
So you know what? I should have got this book first. Oh my gosh.
You need it. I got to get you your copy. Don't you worry.
I cannot wait to read that, because I've been an advocate of that for the longest, and I've been jumped on in several different ways in several different languages, cursing out and everything. But when you listen to some of the lyrics, and it's like, okay, so you're 12 or 13 and you're even younger and you're singing this and saying it over and over again. Come on now. It gets in your psyche. It has to.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. And we refuse to believe that. And then we blame the radio stations, and then we blame the rappers, and then the producers, and then the people who did the beats for the beats. And we're not like inside of our homes, like maybe my child should be listening to that.
Okay.
I do talk about Black people failing to hold themselves accountable. This ain't just what happened and what we've picked up from slavery. As you mentioned at the beginning, some of this is self-inflicted. Hold yourselves accountable.
And you talk about that too in the book?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. It is incredibly important that pushing the message of the connection to ancestral slavery isn't just laying down the accountability for somewhere to lay it down. You know, Black people need to be accountable for the lack of education and commitment to our communities, for knowing better and doing better. We need to hold ourselves accountable. This ain't about no white man and what he did or did not do. This is deeper than that now. We are generations past that. And
Yes.
sure, it's a part of us, but what we gonna do about it? What we gonna do about it? Hood Healing lays that out very clearly. What we're going to do about it. We're gonna tell the truth about it. We're gonna educate ourselves. We're gonna demand accountability from elected officials who lied to us, lied to our children. We are going to share the necessary education in and outside of these schools because our Black children, knowing that they were once royalty and that their ancestors were more than slaves, gives them hope. It's a true reflection of who they are. When I was in Chicago public schools, the history of Black people were slavery.
And that's
That's it. I was so obsessed when I finally learned that Africa did have riches. I went and got a tattoo. I was so obsessed when I learned about Queen Nefertiti, pyramids, tombs, how smart my ancestors were. I was so obsessed with learning that because in Chicago public schools, Key School was named after a white slave master who enslaved my people.
Wow.
And across the street, they gave it credit. There was Frederick Douglass, junior high. Thank you for acknowledging him. A runaway slave who taught himself to read and write.
Yeah.
One of my chapters start off and it says that they taught us the Constitution in buildings named after white men that enslaved our people.
Oh, wow.
Can we get honest? Marie said, ouch. Speak. This is what they don't want to talk about in these schools. I want to talk about this woman because she is such a hope to me. Her name is Nicole Hannah Jones.
Okay.
If you don't know her, follow her. She is the author of the 1619 Project. Nicole Hannah Jones. She is my fairy godmother. And every time I'm talking about this book and every time I'm talking about this topic, I'm going to bring her up and I'm going to amplify her name and her voice and her Blackness because they can't stand her. Because she is on a mission to tell the truth about this country. And 1619 is the year in which slaves were brought to this country. And we as a country don't want to talk about that because that's going to hurt the white kids' feelings. That's going to create guilt. Why would we want to bring up all these issues when we are finally kumbaya?
Really?
We finally gave y'all a president. What is the problem?
What else do you want?
What y'all want? Hush, Black people. But all of this is a Band-Aid on wounds that were across the backs of my ancestors, their flesh. That is still a part of me, that anger that I was displaying out in relationships growing up. I didn't know I was so angry. That is a part of us. Not knowing when to deal with our pain, suppressing, not talking about it, not having a place to lay our grief. That is a part of us.
Have you pushed this book in the school system? I'm just
curious. It's on its way.
Oh.
I went to see Gerard McClendon the other day, and he said the same thing. He said it's time.
Yeah, I think it is.
Absolutely time. I have some book talks coming up. Just this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, I was an exhibitor at the Black Child.
I saw that.
Thank you so much. Really exciting time to see a lot of Black authors and really a great time to penetrate our young audience. I loved reading as a child. It was obsessive for me. And I didn't ride bikes like a lot of children or jump a lot of rope. I was in the house reading. Because something about me snapped when I learned that my great-great-granny could not read freely. Something about me snapped when I learned that in order to write something, my ancestors had to run away in the dark of the night and share a story. Something in me snapped when I learned that in order to be educated, there were white only and colored only schools. Those things snapped inside of me at a very young age. I don't even know why I understood some of that, but I did. I knew that very different from my peers, my siblings, and even my own parents. I say that in the book.
Wow.
I knew that what I understood about Black history would be pivotal to my life. I knew that very young. I outcasted myself because I knew I was very different. I was always a leader. I managed to be popular, but I knew I was very different.
Wow. You knew the assignment very early
I
and lived it
did.
out. And
I
lived it
think I
out.
knew that I was a hood healer very early. I think I
A
understood.
hood healer.
Yeah, I think so. Very early. There's no coincidence in where I grew up. There's no coincidence that in a very dangerous era on the west side of Chicago, and thanks for shouting that out, West Side.
There you go.
I think that in a very dangerous era, my mama and my daddy decided that they were going to move us to the nearest suburb because that also taught me parameters of trauma and parameters of the hood that no one else could probably share. And being a journalist and having the access to tell these stories. So oftentimes white reporters parachute into our community. They tell it the way they want to tell it. They don't know anything about the history of Chicago. They haven't understood enough to empathize with why such a huge percentage of Black people on the West Side are addicted to opioids. And they aren't sensitive enough to understand why mothers have not only become frustrated, but abusive in households where there are no resources, no grocery stores, pathetic excuses for education. And they parachute into our community and they tell our stories as if they know us. And I'm tired.
And they don't.
They don't. This is no disrespect to white reporters who write for Black communities. I just sat in front of a group of Columbia College students where I spoke about the book. Columbia College is where I graduated.
Yeah, you're on the honor. Yeah.
What an honor to go back 10 years later and share my book with aspiring journalists, right? And so one of the white students in the class asked me, she raised her hand and she said to me, as a white aspiring reporter, how do I cover Black neighborhoods? And I told her that's not only an important question, that's a very brave question. And I said, one of the only ways to report our neighborhoods is to go get in them and learn them.
That's right. You got to get in the middle, in the midst of it.
You got to get in the midst of it.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing.
Chicago. You also mentioned a disconnect between the police and Black youth. Now, I know a lot of that has to do with the media, perception, whatever. Expand on that.
Young Black people and the disconnection with local law enforcement goes as far as back to NWA. And that is before my time.
Yes, before your time, but I remember.
You remember. And this idea that they were against us. They as in cops, because cops and police in inner city had always been very parallel to slave owners.
Yes, absolutely.
And abusers during slavery. And so when we think about that authority and young Black kids growing up hearing their parents F the police and it being a very standard thought process in inner cities. I'm not just talking Chicago, I'm talking LA, Miami-Dade, Baltimore, Brooklyn, areas where it's heavy Black and brown, where we are still seeing murders during daylight and white men kneeling on our Black men necks. What is there to trust about the police? And so, very unfortunately, Chicago police have a bad rep. And I talk about in the book newest studies and latest statistics that very badly ranks the Chicago Police Department. I'll tell you this, bringing it back to my brother, bringing it back home, as I like to say. A year and almost a month in, Chicago Police Department has not given my family much of anything to solve this crime. Why would I trust the local law enforcement? And I talk about that very loudly in that now viral piece that we mentioned about the house party.
Mm-hmm.
And interviewed other Black people, including Tink Purcell, who was one of the young ladies who threw the party. She was a young lady from the west side of Chicago. And something that Tink Purcell said was that they were doing the party to memorialize their friends. And so this narrative of not even empathizing or wanting to empathize with young Black people is another reputation of local law enforcement and even local elected officials. And so it's extremely necessary as someone with the platform to tell these stories and know the truth behind these stories that I do. Because the disconnect between the police is way before my time. And it is still a part of my time and will be a part of my children's time as well.
I'm surprised no one's reached out to you to have you do seminars or do training or do something. You know?
I could not even begin to tell you the amount of invites and emails.
Oh, okay, my bad.
It has been overwhelming, the response of people wanting to do partnerships. Shout out Free Spirit Media, Nonviolence Institute of Chicago. I'll be on some very major news outlets in the coming weeks. I won't shout those names out. I'll wait for you to see.
No, at least send me something so I'll know, so I can tell everybody to look.
Certainly. It is a time now, not just for talking about this anymore. And one thing that I've said in every interview, in every book talk, is that healing and trauma are buzzwords right now. It's almost like manifesting.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't just want it to be a buzzword. I want it to be a do word. So
you want to be a verb. Yeah.
Everything needs to be backed up with an action. So I ask people to follow not just the book and purchase your copy on Amazon, but I also ask that people follow the movement and become a part of the movement. Because as a local journalist, I understand the power of telling these stories. Stories move people.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Your book is said to sound the alarm on what it means to be woke.
Mm-hmm.
Expand on that for us.
Another buzzword, woke. Everybody was woke in 2020, and it was probably when I saw our society sleep the longest.
That's true.
Everybody was so woke. The deal is that we cling on to these ideas and these theories, and we don't move them. We cling on to this education, and we learn a little bit about our history, and we don't learn from it. Mm-hmm. We did not learn how to organize as the Black Panthers have. We moved on. Did you see those people Martin Luther King had out there? Masses of people. We failed to organize. We failed to be there for one another. We allow religion, culture, sexuality, and all the above to divide us as a people. Black people are or seem to be the most divided culture in this country.
I agree.
We can go across the street on Madison, and we have Indian families owning gas stations. We have Arab families owning beauty supplies, and our people making a living off of the backs of these people that own these things, working for other people in this country. And it was our ancestors that built this country without a thank you. And so Good Healing is ready to sound the alarm on what it means to be woke what it means to be educated on the history, what it means to connect the history to the present, what it means to act on these things. This is a book of doing, and I hope you'll get your copy. It's
I'm
available on
going to.
Amazon. I hope that you'll read about it. When I was at the Black Child Book Fair, I kept getting people, I just read about your book. It's such a great feeling that the message is resonating. I care less about selling copies and more about this message. Because to heal the hood is a tremendous job. It's not going to just take millennials that just talk a lot and got a lot of sass like me. It's going to take the wisdom of the older generation. It's going to take the knowledge of the youngest generation. It's going to take other cultures and races to understand the depths of the trauma that Black people from Chicago continue to live with day after day. And hood healing is a huge solution-based piece of work that not only tells stories, but tells you ways to heal yourself and your neighborhood.
So when I get your book and when I read your book, I'll know some actual steps to take to be part of this movement.
Absolutely. Yes,
Really?
you will. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. And then you'll reach out to me and you be like, I read this in chapter 5 about doing this. So you want to do something like this, V? And then we're going to crowd up our herd and we're going to do it.
That's what
See,
we're gonna
because
do.
the lack of organizing is pretty much where we went wrong.
I
I've
agree.
got to continue to talk about that because as I learn history and as I look at photos and I follow photojournalists in old magazines, these ideas of groups and then gangs getting such a bad rep on the streets of Chicago, gangs that once started as groups to take care of our people,
Yep.
became a threat in our neighborhood. So it's now time to change the narrative about organizing as Black people in Chicago.
Oh,
Good
I'm all
Healing
for
is
that.
about to do it. Oh yeah,
I'm all. Oh,
it's time. I
I am
cannot wait for you to read
excited.
this.
I am
Yeah,
excited about anybody within earshot, anybody who can hear this. What I want to do first of all is share, and tell everyone that you listen to this phenomenal woman. But what I want you to do is buy the book. And she said, you heard it. She told me. She said, if you buy the book, you'll see definitive actions that you can take to be part
yep.
of this movement. Now, who wouldn't want to be part of a movement that is healing our people? Who wouldn't want to be part of that? I cannot wait to read the book and get back with you and say, look, I read this and I'm thinking about doing this. What you think? How your time look?
I'm
Probably.
excited. I cannot wait. It's a
I
book
am excited.
encouraging people to rethink about getting it done. We can get this done.
And the time is now. You know, we're kind of running out of time because things are going awry. It's time to do
Absolutely.
it now. It's
It's
time to do it
time.
now. Once again, you can purchase her book on Amazon.com. All you have to do is put in there hood healing. It'll come up. Believe me.
I'm
Matter of fact,
right.
you can put
Yeah.
hood healing anywhere and it'll come up. Anywhere. You can. I'm
Yep.
ready to be part of the movement. Yeah, I am too. I am too. I cannot wait to get this book and to read it, and I will communicate to you guys. And if possible, I know she's gonna get. She's super busy already. Oh, and I have to tell you
So,
guys. You know how I found out about her? I told you that I saw it on Facebook, and I was just so impressed. But her people, she was just so. They were so nice. Normally, when someone tells you, you know, you got to talk to my people or my scheduler, normally that means okay, it may not happen. But
boo.
she told me this. She said, you know, you talk to my people, talk to my scheduler, and see if we can, you know, fit this in. And her person was so nice and so receptive, and will get back right away. So
Mhm.
that's just part of her character. So I'm
Absolutely.
believing her. I'll order it. I am too. I'm believing her when she says, when you read it and this, and you think about, you know, we can collaborate doing this, this, and this, maybe churches, maybe this, maybe that,
Yes. Everybody's welcome.
maybe, yeah, sororities, churches, coalition, different
Yes.
organizations. You know, this is something that we can jump on. So I cannot wait to read that book.
Yay. I'm
Can't
so
wait to see it in the
excited.
school system. And I also can't wait till you come to work with our CPD people and make things a little better. It's been bad for
Absolutely.
too long. It's been bad for too
Oh
long.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Thank you so much for having me. All of the conversation. Thanks to everybody that's going to order the book. If you're on social media, I have a fan group, the Hood Healing Facebook fan group.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wait. Hood Healing
Yep, it's a
Facebook.
Hood Healing fan club on Facebook, the Hood Healing fan club.
Okay.
Yep, over 1,000 members, and we talk about the book and we talk about healing responses and trauma. I talk about special updates about where I'm going to be around the city.
Oh,
Some
good. I
more
can meet you
exciting
then.
news.
Okay, good.
I'll be all over the city in the next few months, and I'll be posting about that. So stay tuned.
Good. Wow.
Taking
Hey,
it
you
to
guys.
the
To everyone listening, I told you she was going to be phenomenal and bring it. I didn't say it like this, but again, once again, from Intellectual Radio, Voices of Change. Thank you so much. I
head.
appreciate you so much, and I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you and potentially asking you or begging you back on the show.
I would love to come back. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm so grateful.
Okay, be blessed and keep doing your work, girl. Keep doing it.
I definitely. Thank you so much for your inspiration.
All
Take
right.
care. Enjoy your Sunday, everybody.
Bye bye, everyone. See you next week.